Good morning, everyone. This week's Torah portion, Vayakel, once again discusses the building of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, in the desert. But when the Torah begins telling us how Moses gathered the Jewish people to instruct them about the building of the Mishkan, suddenly Moses begins to teach them the laws of Shabbat. 6 days you shall work, and on the seventh day you shall rest. It should be a holy day unto God. And the question is, why is Shabbat inserted in the midst of the building of the Mishkan? And furthermore, we already learned the laws of Shabbat. And our rabbis explained that the reason Moshe was reiterating the laws of Shabbat is to teach the Jewish people an important lesson. That although building a holy place for a dwelling place for God here on earth, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, is a great commandment, it does not override the laws of Shabbat. And therefore you shall cease the construction of the Mishkan on Shabbat. As our rabbis explain, that there's holiness in space, like a synagogue, a tabernacle, the holy temple, and then there's holiness in time, like the day of Shabbat. Which holiness is greater? You may think the holiness of the sanctuary is greater, and therefore you can construct even on Shabbat. So the Torah teaches us no. The sanctity of the day of Shabbat is even greater than the sanctity of the temple, and therefore you must honor Shabbat and not build the Mishkan on Shabbat. However, our rabbis go on to explain that there's a third holiness, which is even greater not only than the holiness of space, the tabernacle, but even greater than the holiness of time. And that is the holiness of the human soul, the soul within man, which is a part of God. And therefore, although you cannot desecrate Shabbat to build the tabernacle, you can and you must desecrate Shabbat to save a human life, because a human life is even greater. And here we have a beautiful lesson, that there's the holiness of space. Above that is the holiness of time. And above that is the holiness of a human being that's in the image of God. And this is such an important lesson. We all honor the synagogue when we come to pray. We all treat the synagogue with great respect. We all honor Shabbat with our most beautiful, lavish, festive meals, and we do everything to show honor to Shabbat. Well, surely how much more so we should show honor to every human being who is the holiest of all. There's a story told about a grandfather who said to his grandson, take this watch to a watchmaker and see how much they're willing to give you for it. So the grandson goes to the watchmaker. He says, my grandfather wants to sell his watch. How much would you give me for this watch? The watchmaker looks at it and he says, I'll give you $200. He says, okay, let me go ask my grandfather. He goes back to his grandfather. He says he's willing to give $200. The grandfather says, well, take it to a pawn shop. So he takes it to the pawn shop. They look at it. They say, we'll give you $40 for this watch. Kid goes back to his grandfather, says they're willing to give you $40. The grandfather says, it's a pawn shop, you have to negotiate, tell them how good the watch is. He goes back to the pawn shop, he tells them how good the watch is. They look at it again, they say, okay, we'll give you $60. Goes back to his grandfather, he says they're willing to give us $60. At that point, the grandfather says, okay, take it to the local museum in town. See if you could sell it to them. He goes to the museum, they look at it, they say, this is unbelievable, this is an antique, it's a rare watch, one of a kind, they don't make it anymore, this is very valuable, we'll give you $50,000 for this watch. The kid is so excited, he goes running back to his grandfather, says, Grandpa, the museum's willing to give us $50,000. The grandfather says, well, I'm not selling it. He said, what do you mean you're not selling it? You told me to find out how much it's worth and they're willing to give us $50,000. And the grandfather says, my grandson, I know how much this watch is worth. The reason I sent you is because I wanted to teach you the most important lesson in life. And that is, there are always going to be people who are going to undervalue you, who are not going to appreciate your full worth. And then like in the pawn shop, some of them, you'll try to convince them that you're worth more, that you're more valuable. And maybe they'll raise their value a little bit, but they're still not going to appreciate your true value. But the most important thing in life is that you should know your true worth and your true value. And the most important thing is to only associate with people who recognize and appreciate your real worth and value. What the Torah is teaching us is the most important lesson of life. Always recognize your true worth. You have a part of God in you. You're in God's image. Appreciate your own value and then treat others with the same respect, recognizing the divine in them and the value and worth that every human being has. Have a wonderful day.